In the last video, we saw how to add the Bootstrap nav tabs. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you how to add content to the nav tabs. We are going to be starting with the sign up tab. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to create a file in the user folder that will hold all the HTML elements. And the first thing we need to do, we go to File, right click, then click on New File, and we call it signup.php. Now in this file, we'll have all the HTML for the front end that will be displayed inside the sign up tab. The first thing that we'll need to do, we need to add a container so that the container will hold every other element inside the page. Now, so we do div container. Also, we can add different headings as we want. Now, for each heading that we're going to add, or each header, using the H3 or H2 or H1 tag, we put them inside a row. So the first header that we're going to have is going to be inside a div with class row. Div with class row. So we're going to add a text, maybe inside an H3 tag. So say H3. Then we can say CRUD application user sign up. Now, this will be displayed on the page, but it's inside a different row, but inside the container as well. Then we can add a style so that we align it to the center. At this point, it will just be left aligned by default. So we can style it to align it at the center. We use an inline CSS style. So say style. So say text align. It's going to be center. Now the next thing we need to do, we can add subheadings to it. We can also do that inside a div with class row. And we can use a p tag to make it smaller. So we use the p tag. Then we can say, you can write any text that you want inside of these rows. It depends on what you want. So I'm just going to put a text. This is a system that allows users to create, read, update, and delete information. You are welcome to change the text and put whatever you place. Now, also, the next thing we need to do, we need to create, because we're going to be adding a form inside of this page, so we need another div with class row to hold the form. So we create a div with class row. We can then add a form. But if we like, we can add a welcome message to it. So we say div.row. Then we say with an history tag welcome. Please sign up. Now, with this, we have a welcome message. Now, inside this parent class or div with class row, we are going to be creating our form. Now, the form is going to hold different input elements. So the first thing we need to do at this point, we just leave the action to be blank. Then we add a method. Now the method for this is going to be post. Now what we need to understand is there are two types of methods, the post and the get. A simple explanation for this is the post allows us to send data to the database, while the get allows us to retrieve data from the database. So in this case, since it's a form that will be used in submitting data, the method is going to be post. Then also we can add a Bootstrap class that is called form horizontal. Is a Bootstrap class called form horizontal. Now the next thing we can do is we need to start adding the input elements. Now each of the input elements will also be inside its own div tag with class of rows, so that when the browser is being resized, it's not going to distort the elements inside the form. So what we do is the first element is going to be the email. So we create a div with class row. Now inside this div we're going to add a label and also add another div with input field. So the first thing we need to do is we say label, then the label is going to be email. Then there's something important that we need to note. Now Bootstrap uses what we call a 12-column grid system. Now for this 12-column grid system, we're going to be adding them inside our elements. For the tab, for the label, we add a column element of 2, while for the input field we add a column element of 10. But before we go further, let us go to the Bootstrap documentation to see how the column grid system looks like. Now if you go to the Bootstrap documentation and under CSS you click on it, you look for the grid system, then scroll down. This is how the grid system looks like. Now for the grid system there are different classes. We have the class for small or extra small, which are basically used for mobile devices. Then we have the small, which are used for tablets. Then we have the medium, that is for desktop, and also the large for very large screen sizes. But in our own sake, for example, for this class, if we add the call SM2, so and also we create a div with class row. We create a div with class row, or no, we create a div, then we add a class, say call SM10. Now what this does is, if we view this on a small device like a mobile phone, the inputs, this input field, the label and the input field we're going to add here, they will all scale to 100%, so they will be stacked on each other. But for the small device and for the medium and large, it's going to have a percentage of about 20 to 80%. So the label will take 20% of the screen, while this div class will take the other 80% of the screen. But for this extra small device, they will all scale to 100%. They will take 100% each, and they will scale on each other. So inside this div class with call SM10, we add an input field. We type test, then we can give it a name. We call it email. Can give it an ID as well. Can call it email. Then we give it a class. Now there's this Bootstrap class for form and for form inputs. First, if we want to use the Bootstrap class for form inputs, we need to add what we call form group. So in this div class of row, we add a form group. Then here in this class, we had a class called form control. It will give the input field a kind of Bootstrap styling. So for every other input field, we just copy this and paste because they're basically almost going to be the same. So we just copy, paste, then change the name. The next thing we're going to have is the first name, the last name, and the password. So we start from here. We change this to first name, then first name, first name. We can change this to last name, then password. But the type for this is not going to be test because we don't want the test to be displayed, so we use the type password instead. Then one last thing we need to add is we need to add the submit button. So we create another div with class. Let's just paste the one we had, then remove this label. We don't need the label. Then we change this to call XX12. So we want it that at all times it should size according to this. The size of the button should be according to the screen size. So it should scale according to the screen size. So here we have the type is going to be submit. The name, we can call it submit. Also this will call it submit, which is the ID. Then lastly, we add a button with form control. So let's save, then let's go to our browser to view that. But before we go to our browser, we need to call this script inside our index.php. Now to do that, we need to use what we call includes. PHP includes. So this PHP includes allows us to take another PHP file from a different folder, then include it in the folder where we want it to appear. So in this case, we're going to include it here. To do that, we just create a new PHP tag, PHP, then use the includes or the include, then we navigate to this folder and we have the folder here. Then user/signup.php. Then we go back and close this. Now we've been able to include this signup.php file which contains the HTML code. We've included it inside the PHP index.php file. The next thing we have to do is we have to view it on the browser. Now let's visit our browser. Then we refresh this page. We can click on this. Now we can see on the signup.php page or on the sign up page, we have the form displayed, but it's not yet styled. We'll add the styling later to this. So this is how we can add the form into the sign up tab that we have on the index.php page. So in the next video, we add some little CSS styling to make this look better.